A doutora Vandana Shiva é uma referência mundial quando o assunto é meio ambiente. Autora de inúmeros livros, a física e ativista ambiental indiana é uma guardiã incansável da biodiversidade e também do ecofeminismo. Ela é uma das entrevistadas do filme The Nova Corporação, que está em exibição na 10ª Mostra de Cinema. Confira a seguir a nossa entrevista com a doutora Vandana Shiva, em que conversamos sobre os desafios globais que nós e a natureza enfrentamos.
When I became a volunteer for the Chipko movement in the early 70s, first of all, the environmental damage was not so severe. You know, they were cutting trees. That's what they were doing in small patches of forest, and the women were rising. So the three big differences between that time and today is the devastation is everywhere. So the insanity is much wider and much deeper and much faster. That's the first difference. As I said, that time it was just the forest lobby and a small group of women dedicated over a decade could take them on, you know, and I volunteered my time, I volunteered my research, I volunteered my writing. We stopped the logging. And what you see today is actually much more violence against the Earth defenders. And you just have to look at Latin America. How many Earth defenders are actually being killed for protecting their forests or their rivers or their homes? I think the third big difference is that because the devastation is so much worse, actually the ecological consciousness is also much broader. You know, so we in fact are waiting for, in what I would call it, a Chipko movement, you know, Chipko movement where the creativity of the movements is able to resonate and amplify enough to create a shift in the paradigm and policies, which means a shift in the system. And it's, you know, it's happened before in history. Dictatorships were removed again and again. The empire was removed. And it's just that I really do believe we need to see this as a new global empire because the elites are totally coherently organized. And we need to deal with it like those who went before us and fought for freedom dealt with empire, you know?
In that sense, we have some data that shows that consciousness is growing. Do you see that as a good development? Are we far enough yet, or it's still a long way to go in that direction?
All my thinking in ecology begins with the perspective of the earth and the perspective of people of the earth, you know? Which means I always put the market in the context of ecology, rather than put ecology in the context of the market. So I do not believe green consumerism is adequate. Worse, it could become the next danger. Because, you know, I've done many writings here. Here's Bill Gates, who's just decided, why should people eat food? Unless I get 15 patents, you know? Just like Monsanto thought, why should the farmers save seeds? You know, we should have all the patents and it should be illegal for farmers to save seeds. That's why I started the Navdanya movement and the seed saving movement in 1987. Well, we are at that kind of moment today with Bill Gates and fake food, you know. But before he got the patents and before he financed the Impossible Burger and fake meat and fake milk and fake breast milk, he has prepared massive advertising, massive propaganda. So if you don't think ecologically in terms of the whole process, how something was made, what its true ecological costs are, you could actually ride the Gates bandwagon to the next round of destruction of fake meat. Yeah. So consumerism isn't a solution. Earth citizenship is the solution. We have to realize we are members of the Earth family. Other beings are our relatives. Other human beings are our extended family. And we have to start producing and consuming in ways that do not harm other species and other human beings. And it's only with that consciousness will we be able to make the shift. So a consumer consciousness is you're a nobody, except for what you buy. That means you already handed over the power to corporations. When you realize I'm an earth being and I have the power, then you exercise true power.
In that sense, one of the things that was really nice to listen and hear you talking about is ecofeminism. Could you expand on that, please?
All indigenous cultures have seen themselves as part of the earth, but not till colonialism and the rise of mechanistic philosophy as a tool of colonization did we define the earth as dead. So if you look at two facts, that around the time when colonialism was happening, a very violent separation from the earth was happening, not just as a conceptual framework, but as a physical genocide. It was the witch hunts. 9 million people in Europe were killed as witches. What was their crime? They were close to nature. They did not believe in the illusion we are masters and separate from nature. So for me, what is ecofeminism? It's correcting the harms of colonialism, which is capitalist patriarchy, which defines women as less, which defines nature as dead. And ecofeminism very simply recognizes nature is alive, nature is our mother, and women as part of nature, as part of humanity, are not less than men, yeah, and definitely not passive, not objects to be owned, not flesh to be traded, and that's feminism. So ecology and feminism coming together is a necessity, given that colonialism tried to conquer people of color through slavery, women as chattel, and the earth as property. It all went together.
Do you see race and gender being at the forefront of the environmental developments and confrontation with the whole system?
What I would say is, we know that women and indigenous people and people of color have been, along with the earth, most violated in these 500 years. And yet, in spite of that violence, they are the ones who are standing as guides to the future. They are the bridges to the future. They have refused to forget. They have not internalized their objectification. The colonizers thought they're objects and property. But if women are still resisting, I just did a promotional blurb for a book from Latin America on femicide and how ecocide and femicide go together because women are standing there, defending their land, and they're the ones who are getting killed. Indigenous people are getting killed because they are defending the earth. They are the most committed earth defenders. So you have both the reality that those who are facing the worst violence are women and indigenous people, but those who are leading the way to another world, a possible world for all of humanity, not just for themselves, are women and indigenous people. The new moment of our time is there is a lot of solidarity, which comes from the consciousness of we are one humanity on one planet. And because of that solidarity, the bluff is being called.
How can we strive for more solidarity, more sharing, more care? How do you see that done?
I think the whole COVID lockdown shifted this from being a theoretical question to being a lived alternative. If you did not care, you could not have survived. And if someone didn't care for you, you couldn't have survived. If 1.5 years you've been locked down, your consumer identity has already been shut off. And you've had to distinguish between what's essential and what's not. It has not only made us differentiate between what's essential and not essential, and I'm not saying that there isn't a consumer class that is going crazy, but I think there's a new objective reality of enoughness. And that is where we will find our way forward, because out of enoughness will come lowering the ecological footprint. Out of enoughness will come more to share. Out of enoughness will come the commitment to create new economies of care where no one has to starve to death. And the more different people start to recognize that we could live a better life with less. Yeah. Earlier it used to be a theoretical question. Now it has become the lived necessity for the majority. And now we have to turn it into the next stage of human evolution. Yeah. Get off the consumerist track into the economies of care. I mean, I've just finished my new book called From Greed to Care. Yeah, we've had economies of greed, which is the colonial economies, which unfortunately are not economies because they're not about our home. They're not about our cause. They are about greed, 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 and violence, 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 war, war, war. But people have survived because they never stopped practicing. Okay, women never stopped. Otherwise, we would all be dead. If women had lived according to capitalist patriarchy's idea of competition, idea of greed, idea of only thinking of yourself, none of us would be here. If we are here, it's because there was a continuation of care. And that, I think, is the future.
The way we organize society so far, this whole polarization between hate speech and it's coming along with deforestation, with the malpractices against nature. Do you see a correlation between the human aspect of it?
Yeah. Well, there's a very, very intimate correlation between the explosion of hate and social and cultural polarization and the explosion of economic polarization. You know, basically accumulated 1.37, nearly 1.4 trillion in this period of lockdown, where large numbers lost their livelihoods, large numbers lost access to food, and the UN system is saying we are on the verge of famine for large numbers of human population. So the colonial rhetoric is always divide and rule. Grab the wealth and keep those you rule divided, otherwise it'll throw you out. You cannot accumulate through extractivism limitlessly, because those you extract from will unite and fight you out. So divide and rule is a necessary part of empire. And these days it's being amplified through the new technologies. The big tech, which is the big extractors, are amplifying it. Facebook amplifies hate. Cambridge Analytica amplifies hate. You know, they're part of the amplification of hate. And that's why building unity, not just with the earth for our ecological survival, but within humanity for our social survival, is one ecological challenge. You know, if we are part of the earth, yeah, then our life depends on what the earth gives us, the breath, the food, the water. But we are also part of one human family. And there the sustenance at the social level comes from unity. And my own reading of it is, even before the earth gets destroyed, humanity has the capacity to kill each other to death if we don't tame hate and substitute it with care and love.